Okay, here's the wolf, and we're going to move pretty quickly through this, so hang on. Walnut stock, this is ambidextrous, and I think it's prettier, although not quite as comfortable as a dedicated right-hand, left-hand stock like the FX Royale. I will, of course, get into the mechanics of the gun. We'll talk about how to program it, but I'm not going to show you how to do everything because that's just too tedious, too long. But here's the display: pressure, power, shot count, and the battery life. So yeah, it's a good looking gun, but the most interesting part is what's hidden underneath this stock. Here is the brains behind this whole thing. All powered by a battery that gives about 1,500 shots per charge and charges up in about, I don't know, 10-12 hours, something like that. Here's the battery right here. You can see it plugs into the circuit board there. And then from the circuit board, these yellow cables, you can see that those plug into the solenoid. The trigger right there scared the crap out of me because I forgot the shroud was off, and that was a lot louder than I thought it would be. The light, when it's on, actually reflects up into the plastic switch there, kind of like fiber optics. You have a 500cc bottle, which gives about 120 shots on high power, which is about 36 foot-pounds, or 180 shots on low power, which is 30 foot-pounds. The shroud fits onto the barrel, and it attaches via clamping down with these two hex screws in the back of it here. You can see this barrel has a really nice crown to it. Looks like a stainless steel as well. I'm a little curious as to why they went with 17 inches instead of 18. You know, the 18 seems to be the standard for most air guns, and I never really got a good answer as to why Daystate decided 17 inch. I mean, it's accurate. The gun shot really well, so I guess they don't have to justify it if it's shooting well. And the trigger is basically a switch. It's a switch for the solenoid. It's not, you know, there's no releasing of spring tension hammer anywhere. So it can be adjusted from light to ridiculously light. And here's those hex screws clamping down the shroud on the barrel. I like this design actually. It's simple. So getting her all back in the stock is kind of tricky. These wires need to be tucked in, but once they are, it does actually fit very well. And I was impressed at how well Daystate made a stock that holds this so securely. This gun fit perfectly back into the stock. There's no play, no looseness, no wobble to it. I was really happy to see how well it fit. So it's all held in place by this one big screw, which seems about the size of something you'd see in your trailer hitch of your truck. And when it's put in there, it all fits nice and snug. There's no, like I said, there's no wobble, no shake to it. It feels like one solid piece, which it should, considering the price point of this gun. Here's the magazine, and I like this magazine. It's different than a magazine for a Marauder or an FX in that there is no spring tension on the pellet when the probe is pushing it into the barrel. And what I mean by that is it locks into place each time. You can see right here when I push this switch on the bottom of it that each time it twists and locks into place. So when the probe pushes the pellet forward, it's not getting clipped at the back. And this is a single shot tray held in by pins, and you see those two magnets on the bottom there. And so here's how the switch on the bottom of the magazine is tripped. This little lever right here on the bolt grabs that, and each time it grabs it, it trips that switch and it rotates another pellet. And so here it is in action. You can see that the bolt probe is nothing more than a probe. I mean, there's no cocking of any hammer, as mentioned before. It's a solenoid. So all it has to do is rotate each pellet. So yes, it is possible to load 2 pellets. So you got to keep your head in the game when you're shooting this one. And here you can get a better look at that fiber optics of the light coming up there so you can see that the power is on when it's switched on. The LCD stays on, in this case, for a few seconds and goes off. This is adjustable. You can, I think, in fact, have that stay on permanently if you'd like. Here's a basic description of how you program this gun. Basically, you hold down the trigger, turn on the gun, and then go through a series of options that it offers. In this case, I'm going to switch from high power to low power. And then when you're all done adjusting it, you just turn the gun off and it saves your setting. And here's how you charge it. Really simple, which slides in right behind the trigger guard. And as mentioned, it takes about, I think, 10 to 12 hours. Here's the fill probe here. It has this nice cap to it, which fits snugly and does a really good job of protecting it when you're not filling the gun. I like this. I wish more had this. There are two parts of this gun that I really didn't like. You saw where the bolt, the larger bolt, fits in right here. Well, behind that is a smaller hex bolt, and the smaller hex screw fixes this entire trigger pack as well as the circuit board to the air chamber above it. So in a sense, the entire gun is at the mercy of the smaller screw if you bump the barrel or the air reservoir, the scope. Basically, the larger screw holds the trigger pack onto the stock, but that smaller screw holds the trigger pack to the meat of the gun. So what happens is if you jar the living heck out of that barrel or the bottle, all the force is felt on that smaller screw, which is not nearly as strong as the larger screw that holds it to the stock. I don't like this design. I think they could do this better. Find a way to secure it so that if you bump the barrel or the air reservoir against a tree or something in the woods, that larger screw bears the weight of that hit, not the smaller one. And here's the other thing I didn't like. Well, I do like this trigger. You can see that it has all these screws in the bottom here. It's highly adjustable from, like I said, light to crazy light. But my issue is with the QC for Daystate. And that's that when the gun arrived, it fired perfectly for about 20 shots, and then it stopped firing entirely. And it's these two screws right here that hold the switch for the trigger in place. And basically they were clamped down too hard. If you hear this, you hear that click? That's the trigger flipping the switch, and I couldn't hear that. What happened was that, like I said, these two screws, these two nuts, were pinching the switch too hard, and it was unable to switch. A quick call from Daystate, a quick call to AOA, had it fixed in no time. Those guys know this gun inside and out, and right away they said they knew what the problem was and guided me through it, and it was fixed in a matter of minutes. So the guys at AOA know this gun inside and out, but they shouldn't have to be doing this. The gun should come firing properly. And if this is an issue, then Daystate should recognize it and address it, because when you're paying this kind of money for a gun, it should not stop firing after 20 rounds when you get it. Now, all that said, it was perfect. Never had any problem once I just loosened those nuts a tiny bit. But, let's get some quality control in there, or redesign it so it can't pinch that switch too hard. This shouldn't be too hard to fix. Okay, my rant is done on what otherwise was an awesome gun. You can see that it's just a trigger and a solenoid here, so that you can continuously pull this trigger over and over and over again. This, to me, lends itself to a semi-auto. That's initially what I thought of. The semi-auto on the Monsoon, as I understand, is powered by air. And there's no reason for me to think that the big brains over at Daystate across the pond here couldn't also find a way to make this gun semi-auto. Man, that would be a lot of fun, wouldn't it? And yeah, there's a lot of complicated parts of this gun, but you can't argue with the accuracy and you can't argue with the shot count. One of the best parts about this gun was that I could take it to the range and literally not have to bring along my tank with me. I could count on getting 150 very consistent shots out of this. I could do all the work I wanted with the crowning, all the work I wanted with accuracy, and I didn't have to fill it one time. I loved that. It's like getting a pygmy bottle with it for free. And I thought it did great offhand. It's heavier than the Royal and most other guns. I think this one comes in at about 8.5 pounds, something like that, which makes sense with all the wiring and that big 500cc bottle on it. But if you can afford it, man, this thing's a lot of fun. That's it, guys. Hope you like this, and we'll see you on the next gun.